don't gotta do it if you don't want to. You don't gotta do it if you don't want to. It's just a suggestion.
Well,
Cheers.
there's to the end of the Milagro, which was really good.
It was. It
Still is. There's some left.
Still, yeah. Smooth.
Welcome back to the conversation. I'm letter K. With me, perpetually, Psych. Last episode, we talked about communication, and I think we had a really good conversation about ways to communicate, problems that arise with communication. This time, I think we kind of really did the core of communication well, but now I want to get into the nitty-gritty. The biggest part of communication, conflict.
Yes.
Everything that you do to communicate with somebody else has the potential to create conflict, to generate strife. Not everybody wants to hear what you're saying, and maybe you don't want to hear what they're saying. I totally dig it. So conflict resolution is today's topic, and I would like to start by asking you a question that was given to me by ChatGPT. So what's the dumbest argument you've ever had?
Oh, well, there's been so many. I mean, it's hard to pull just one.
If you just reach into the middle of the pile. And
the dumbest argument I've ever had. So I'm assuming you're talking in my current adult life. I mean, we're not going all the way back to childhood where he's looking at me, he touched me, like that. You're not talking about that.
Not silly dumb. Yes. Adult, absurd conflict.
Mm-hmm. I don't think I have a specific example I can give you, but what I will say is it's probably those conflicts that you have, those disagreements that revolve around semantics. Basically, both parties have the same goal in mind. They have the same drive. They want to see the same outcome. And it's really a matter of disagreeing about the names that they're using for certain things. Basically, they agree, but they don't know they agree because they're calling this, and they're calling that, and the parties don't understand what that thing means that the other person's saying, and the other person is the same. So they're going around in the circle about this thing that they agree upon without knowing that they agree upon just because the name is different.
It's the tomato conundrum.
Precisely.
I got to have a lot of dumb arguments in my day because I was a grocery manager for 15 years. And oftentimes I did not handle it super well because you know me, I was a snarky little shit when I was younger.
Were you?
Yeah. Hard to believe, I know. But like, I would get into arguments with cashiers all the time about stuff. And I always felt like I was right. I probably was always right because it was usually the technical aspects of the cash register. We'd argue about all the time. And I remember there was this older lady who I used to, when I was a young manager, and she would always get mad at me for trying to teach her something or trying to show her something. And I'll never forget one time I'm trying to show her how to do something silly like add multiples to a scanned item.
All right.
And she was like, "That's not how you do it." So we're sitting there, we're customer right in front of us. They're arguing, and she just stops, looks up at me, and says, "I'm older than you, so I know better."
Okay, that's a great place to be.
Yeah, but the core of it was, and this is in front of the customers. The core of it was we were not effectively engaging in the conflict resolution in real time while we're embarrassing ourselves and our company name with the customer standing right there. So that's what I want to get your thoughts on is we know that it takes two people to create a conflict. That's you can't conflict. You can't
At least two.
At least two. And and it also takes two people to create a solution. One person can't resolve a conflict unless you're at war and you kill the other person and problem solved.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't. If me and you are in an argument, if me and you are engaged in conflict, and I bring my half of the solution to the table, you have to, even if it's just you acknowledging it and stopping your end of the conflict, it still takes both of us to resolve that conflict.
I see what you're saying. There could be an alternative where, let's say the conflict begins at the point where I assume all of your stuff is now my stuff. And of course you object. And so now we have this conflict. And if I come to the conclusion, you know what, you're right. The stuff I thought was my stuff was never mine, and it was always yours, and I return all the things that were yours. Well, then I, at that point, have unilaterally ended the conflict, right?
You are on purpose trying to subvert the core of this argument.
I'm just adding perspective.
You stealing from me is not the right kind of conflict.
I would never do that.
Yeah, but as a rhetorical example, yes, you have found a loophole in my argument almost immediately. And now let's talk about the real argument.
All right, let's go.
So we're scientists, or we're coworkers, and we disagree on how to engage. Like, I mean, you obviously engage in conflict in your job
Often
about how to properly manage the nature of your service that you provide.
Mm-hmm.
So when you find yourself arguing over a procedure or a path forward or some kind of way that needs to, a decision that needs to be made,
mm-hmm.
what are your go-to toolbox tools for bringing that conflict into the professional scope and trying to engage in an active resolution?
Great question. So I make it a habit to avoid arguing at all costs, almost treating it like, I'm a parent, I have children. I don't argue with my children. I don't. Okay. At the point the parent starts arguing with the child, the parent, in my opinion, is somewhat losing, right? Mm-hmm. They're on their heels. They're backpedaling. They're treating the child as equals, and they're not. The parent is the authority figure. The parent is older. The parent is in charge of caring for them and bringing them into this world and keeping them here safe and sound. So when I'm arguing with them, no, I don't do that. And so I take that same philosophy to work. If I'm in charge of this, and you're here to provide a certain service, a role, a valuable one at that, which I acknowledge. But if I'm ultimately in charge of being responsible for the outcome, if I have to go and defend what happened if something goes wrong, then I get the final say. So the tricky part is navigating through that to allow them, whoever I'm trying to impart something to own the decision or the direction that I would like them to own. So I do that with questions mostly. I ask a lot of well-pointed questions to get the other party to assume my viewpoint without them knowing that that's my viewpoint. It's kind of, it's borderline manipulation, but it's artfully done so that I can meander their ideas and thoughts around. And then when they get there, because they're answering my questions, then they finally can assume that they can look through the world through the lens that I'm looking at it through. And then now we're aligned. It's all about getting them to align with my thoughts and ideas.
Yeah, you're talking about the basic Socratic method, not arguing, but asking questions to find answers together. Yes, I do the same thing. And I think that's a really good way to manage underlings. Well, I'll ask you this. Your supervisor comes down to you and now they are arguing with you about something you're doing in your classroom.
Mm-hmm.
And
which I love.
yeah, I know you do. And you can't treat them the same way because they are not you can't liken them to children because you're not in charge of them.
Mm-hmm.
How do you manage that conflict resolution?
So I still start there. Because
I start treating everybody like children. That's my number one thing. Everybody starts being treated like children,
Okay.
and then we expand.
All right. Okay. So if we're thinking about this, if you think you're right,
Mhm.
then by definition you think the other party is wrong. And if you think you're right, then you think whatever your idea is smart and intelligent. So if they are not aligned with you, then what are they? So
Maroons.
so yes, I start at the beginning. I travel the simplest course first and try to, at the very least, if it doesn't work, at least from them speaking and me listening, I can get a better understanding of where they're coming from.
I love how the simplest thing for you is to just start by assuming everybody's less intelligent than you are.
I think that you took a leap there when you were putting them together. I use it as an example to kind of get us started. But no, I'm not. I don't assume everyone is children. And then from there, if I am in fact correct, then in most things in this world nowadays, at least, there's evidence. You can look something up. I can present something. I can show them something. And so then I will do my best to display and demonstrate whatever it is that I am so adamant about and I think should be changed after I present all of that information. If they're the ones in charge, right? If they're my supervisor, my boss, if they're the owner, whoever it may be, if they're in charge, they're in charge for a reason. And part of that is they have to be held accountable for the decisions and the outcomes. If they're responsible for the things I do and they're going to have to go and accept the consequences for whatever happens in this arrangement or this circumstance, then okay, fine. If they want to go down the wrong path, if I see it happening and they insist, well, who am I to stop them? I'll let them go. And I won't think twice about it. I'm not going to take it personally. I'll be a little frustrated in the meantime, but I understand what my role is in that interaction. And if they want to completely come in and demolish everything that I'm doing and take credit when it goes, well, you know what? My job is to do my job. And if I can still do that with all of this nonsense, then I'm happy to continue.
So it's not so much conflict resolution as it is understanding the hierarchy of your bureaucratic structure and knowing that you can offer information and you can offer data, you can offer the benefit of your experience, but if they choose not to listen,
Sure.
You don't really have a hand in the game anymore.
It gets really tricky when you're talking about peers. If you're talking about colleagues, if they're people on the same level, where you work, if you had to argue with you in another department,
I'd win.
if you understand,
Yes.
if you're have the same position, the same title, and the same amount of authority that another person has in your department, assuming that this is just pure imagination. But if you were to argue with the same person and you both were tasked with coming up with a plan and a solution that you can both agree with, what does it take to make that happen? So, a lot of communication, a lot of frustration, a lot of concessions, some compromise, maybe, which I don't like compromise very much because it really means nobody gets what they want.
Yes. So ChatGPT's conflict resolution strategies align with a lot of what you're saying, and it does specifically mention collaboration versus compromise. If we are peers and we are working together, the solution isn't that we both get pieces of what we want, it's that we do something together. Mm-hmm. That's collaboration versus compromise. We live in a compromise driven society. We can't get along well enough to collaborate on anything in this country. We have to compromise everywhere we go. But at the individual layer, if you are talking about peers, I think that communication in a collaborative environment should always be your goal. Even with the guys that I work with, I mean, I'm technically their lead, but I don't really have much more authority over them. I'm just kind of their manager. And so I treat everything that we do as a collaborative environment. And it frustrates some of the guys, but I try to explain it in a way, because they come to me like I'm the expert.
Mm-hmm.
And they are literally the subject matter experts for AV installation. I haven't put a TV up in 4 years. And they know much more about it than me, but they always come to me with questions. And so I do as you're suggesting. I don't give answers. I ask questions. And it's mostly, to me, I think it's mostly a confidence issue, that they need the confidence to engage their ideas. And so I feel like by engaging them in a collaborative environment, instead of just being their boss and saying, yeah, that sounds good, go do it, that it should instill this collaborative environment. It should help build confidence. It should give them the ownership, the permission to take ownership and to utilize their skills effectively.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, not everybody does that. I have a couple of guys on my team who have come to me more than once and been like, you change your mind about this every time I ask you about it. And my question is always, well, do both ways work? And then I'll ask them, did I come up with these ideas, or did I ask you questions and you drew conclusions based on your knowledge of the environment you're working in? They don't even realize that I'm not making the choices.
Mm-hmm.
We're collaborating. But so how do you take somebody in that situation where you're trying to be collaborative and they're frustrated because they just want you to order them around, but that's not sustainable? How do you deal with somebody who doesn't understand what's going on here? Is it more communication, or do you just not, or do you understand that they don't want to collaborate? They just want you to give them an order so they can get back to work.
Yeah, I suppose if you have an understanding that that's what they prefer, and if they're truly okay with it, a lot of people are not. When you talk about collaboration, at some level, almost everyone fears failure. And so if they have to step out on a limb and offer something of themselves that other people might disapprove of or disagree with, there's fear. It's steeped in fear. And so if I have to collaborate, now I have to actually be vulnerable. I have
Share my ideas.
I have to put myself out there. Aside from that, to collaborate, you have to have the ability to think critically. Consistently think critically. You have to be listening. You have to be actively listening. You have to be able to think and process the information that you have been exposed to. And then you have to put that into words. You have to communicate that clearly. And the thing is, everyone's going to fail. Everyone fails. The people that are typically the people that are most successful have found ways to have failed the most and have found ways to turn it around and learn from those lessons. So if I can explain it or frame it in such a way that, hey, you know what, it's okay. All of the thoughts are good. If we're just throwing things at the wall and seeing what sticks, that's fine. Not all of those are going to be good ideas. I joke around with my class all the time. Like, hey, that was a great thought. That's a bad idea. And I'll just tell them that it's a great thought. It's a bad idea. And I'll explain why. But going through the process of disclosing my method, I am not against sharing the exact method that I'm using or the process that I'm taking to bring people together and communicate and collaborate. I will, sometimes more than necessary, explain myself and explain why we're doing what we're doing. Because many times the people that I encounter don't have a clear understanding of why are we even doing this to begin with. And if they don't know why we're in this boat to begin with and why we're all paddling together, then
Rowboat.
then the whatever happens after that is going to be lost, more or less.
So back to treating people like children, and this is how it feels to me, right? So, and I'll tell you this. So, as a grocery manager, I always likened, because there's a certain kind of cheerless pleasantry that you engage when you're a grocery manager, when you're in box retail like that.
Okay.
You're pleasant without being excited. That's kind of how it is. And I always likened it to treating everybody like you are the headmaster of an old-timey private school. You got two kinds of people at the private school. You got the trust fund kids who are the customers, and you have to treat them with kid gloves, and you have to answer all their questions. You got to be super sweet to them, and they're funding your private school. Then you got the employees who are more like the tradesman's son.
Mm-hmm.
You having the tradesman, like a blacksmith or something, made enough money to send their kid to school to get some education before they start an apprenticeship somewhere. You can be a little bit more direct and serious with them. So it's not the two different kinds of people. And so, but you're always treating everybody like kids.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the problem that I have when people keep coming to me asking me the same question over and over, because they've got a childlike lack of confidence in their ability. Because now we're not talking about kids, we're talking about guys in their 40s and 50s who've been doing this for decades,
Mm-hmm.
asking me stuff that's their job. What I want to avoid is that parent-kid dynamic where it's like, do it because I said so. Or yes, do it this way, and explaining it. That's a very parent-child. Those are the two major choices. I want to give them the confidence to say, last time I did this, I went and talked to my boss, and he gave me the runaround, but we solved the problem, collaboration. I can do it the same way this time.
It sounds like you want to lend them power and control.
I do.
So one way you can do that is providing them options that they can select from. So let's say, in all of your infinite wisdom on the job and the vast amount of experience that you've gained to rise to the position that you are now currently in, you see a project that you've done many times before, one which that you've tackled 2, 3, 4 times, 2, 3, 4 different ways repeatedly. And you know that those ways will lead to a successful outcome. You could present 4 different options and allow them to select from them, and then
I usually
see what they say.
I usually act like Captain Picard on the Enterprise bridge. I ask them for options, and then we select an option.
Okay.
They have all the solutions.
Are they presenting options
They are
consistently?
They are. Because I make them.
All right.
I don't.
Okay. But so you are making them do something.
I'm making them offer. I'm making them engage in a collaborative environment.
Okay.
The problem, because like I said, they do this day in, day out. I do not. Do I have a competency in what they do? Yes. Am I better at it than they are? I don't think so. So
just because you're not currently practicing.
Yeah, I think it's a confidence thing, as far as.
You might be right.
And so, but to take it back, the conflict arises when they get frustrated that I'm not just giving them orders. So
they want the orders.
Yeah, I was telling you before we started recording that I've recently changed some of my formatting to a more like direct point and shoot management style, and they're responding to it much better. Mm-hmm. But they have, so the confidence that they have in me, I think you hit the nail right on the head, when it's not really confidence in my ability. It's just it's the comfort in not having to present their own ideas.
You could try it. You could try it. But if they're coming back to you time and time again, telling you, or at least showing you that all they want is to work within this framework where they know exactly what to do and when, then what's wrong with that?
They shouldn't need me. That's the thing. Yeah, but
Are you trying to put yourself out of a job?
yeah.
Okay, and if
I never wanted to be in charge. You know this.
Okay, I do, but where would you go if you're not doing what you're currently doing?
I would do the job they hired me to do, which is high-level design engineering for the
So
AV.
you're looking for your replacement.
Oh yeah,
You want a demotion.
I do, and I've been pretty open about that. I've got a couple of younger guys on the team.
You are an outlier. You want less. Actually, there are a great many people that have stepped aside from more successful ventures to assume less responsibility. So I guess you're not alone.
When I went back to school to learn what I do now, and then I took the job that I have now.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to be one of the guys. I've never been one of the team. I've always been the manager ever since I was.
Well, you start as a team member.
Yeah.
You start as one of the guys.
Yeah. Yeah. When I was a janitor in 2000.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I did. But, I mean, I don't know if I don't necessarily want to just make this about me, because there's nothing to do with communication or conflict resolution. But the fact that I think this is probably what my biggest issue is, if we're thinking about it. The fact that I have constantly had to accept more responsibility because I feel that there were leadership qualities lacking, and that I could fill those because of all my, education and experience on the subject. And that's what happened.
Yeah. This is all your fault, and you communicated yourself to your current position, and now you're conflicted. See, communication, conflict.
But the thing is, I took the position because the alternatives would have been bad for my company or my team. But management of the operations of my organization is not my job. They hired me to be a design engineer.
Yes.
And I still do that.
Well, okay. So we can just say the character traits that you possess don't allow you to allow substandard work to persist. And so where you are now, you're going to be wherever, unless you truly divorce yourself from your character and your integrity.
Okay.
Be that as it may, you have things going on at work like anybody else, that things that need to be resolved with the personnel and the people.
Yes. And so, yes. And I am frustrated constantly, which brings me into my segue. One of the hardest things about conflict resolution is emotional regulation. Mm-hmm. Because you can't. So in groceries, they used to say, "Don't discipline mad." Like, if you're pissed at somebody and you're going to yell at them, you stop. You stop what you're doing and you walk away until you're in a better mindset, because you can't resolve a conflict by escalating the argument.
So I would say I mostly agree with that. And I would add to that it is possible to discipline somebody when you are genuinely angry, so long as you're not acting in or acting out in that anger. And
that's the emotional regulation part.
Yeah.
But how many people do you know can just be welled up with fury and be like, "I'm going to talk to you like a human being right now"?
This guy
yeah. So pick another one, because I couldn't do
it. They're few and far between. It's a learned skill. It's not something that, some of it is temperament. Some of it is the one's upbringing and their experience. I know with my father, I don't think I ever heard him yell.
Yeah.
It had to be serious, right? So with seeing that growing up and observing his patience and observing how he could navigate through difficult situations and conflict and keep his calm and keep his cool, I modeled my current life after what I saw him do.
And I do that a lot professionally where I regulate my emotions, and I do it very well. I'm successful at it, but it is for me, it's 100% learned, and it is work. Like it is work. Like I will be driving home, listening to death metal, screaming because I'm so frustrated. But yes,
It takes a toll on you.
it super does. And I mean, I know probably one of the reasons why you're so good at it is because you authentically like conflict. You get a grin on your face. Oh boy, we're about to engage in some conflict right now.
So the way I view it is anybody can get along with easy people, right? If people are if individuals are easygoing and likable and lovable, if they're pleasant to be around, those people anybody can get along with, right? So I view it as more or less a challenge and a it's like this award or something out there I can earn if I can get along with them, and almost nobody gets along with them, then somehow I've personally achieved something.
Yeah, and I think that's great. I think that's an
They're side quests.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing to strive to. Like, and it's funny because like I have a few problems on my team right now. Even my boss, I find myself stopping him and correcting him because I see him wanting to lead into like negative comments. And for me, I always try to keep everything positive because you can't change the lot that you're given unless you want to actively change the lot you're given. But for me, there's always going to be some kind of conflict. You can't have a team of any number size and expect everyone to just be perfect and get along together. It just doesn't work that way.
I want to comment on keeping everything positive. I think positivity is necessary. I think if you can stay positive the majority of the time, that's great. I think we might be doing our teams a disservice to completely shelter them and scrub anything negative from our work environments, because it almost dulls the effect of the positivity that comes out later. There needs to be some contrast, is what I'm suggesting.
So I do agree. I do find that because I do keep things like some of the high level bureaucracy, politics, and such. I keep that from the team. Those are the biggest negative aspects of what we do because our job is not hard. Let's be honest. All we have to do is get along long enough to hang some TVs. But
you're understating that.
yes, it's a little more complicated, but that's essentially what's going on. It's just physical light construction work, and everything else I do for them. But I do find that when I am more direct about things that aren't inherently positive, that the response rate is higher. And if we're consistent about see this went wrong, this went wrong, this went wrong, this is how we could do better next time, that kind of stuff. If I'm consistent about that kind of stuff, I find that the guys aren't startled by it, they're not defensive about it, and they take it better. But it all goes down to the way that you present those negative aspects. You have to stay positive in your negativity. I could be like, yeah, so we fucked this up. Mm-hmm. And this shit over here is not gonna work right unless we go out and rebuild it. And this customer is pissed off. I can say the exact same thing. Hey guys, this right here, we did it. We did it. It didn't come out the way we hoped. We got to go back and look at it again. I need you guys to go handle that for me. We have a situation over here where this customer lodged a complaint about this thing that we did. There's nothing inherently negative in that language. It's just facts. And by it being just facts, there's no need to be defensive about it, because I can say you screwed up, or I can say we need to go fix this, and that's a big part for me. And I find a lot of success with that. So I do agree that just being bubbly and positive and only dwelling on the happy thoughts is dangerous, but you do need to stay positive and subvert negative language whenever you are talking about negative things.
Sure. And there needs to be some sort of agreement, at least some, about the things that are negative. Because if the people that you're working with don't agree that the thing you think is so bad is indeed undesirable and bad and not good for what we're trying to accomplish, then you're not gonna get there. Like, you could say it,
Yeah.
but if they don't believe it,
Yeah. Fortunately, we deal in technology. So if a connection is made poorly and it doesn't work, there's no arguing that fact. You can go see for yourself if you like.
true.
So, but yes, when you're talking about dealing with other people, especially customer base, that's one of the things that I always try to do is give the guys more opportunities to engage with customers, because they've spent their lives as like these white collar construction workers.
Mhm.
They don't really deal with people that often, so they find that to be very challenging. And the only time where they might disagree with anything that I have to say about our business operations would probably be how we deal with our client base, especially at the lab. The lab is hard because when you have customers, you have to treat the customer well. You gotta succeed for the customer. You got that whole customer is always right concept.
Which I learned about recently, and it's, from what I understand, it's false.
Yeah.
And it's been abbreviated over time. And the full statement was the customer is always right as in matters of taste.
Yeah.
Have you heard that?
It's an old retail expression. I can't remember who said it. We'll have to look it up. But yes, when I was in my snarky phase, customers would always say, hey, isn't the customer always right? And I would always say, yeah, it's a common fallacy or misconception.
Mm-hmm.
And oh my, she gets in so much trouble. But dealing with people, giving them the opportunity, I think giving people the opportunity to safely engage in conflict resolution
Mm-hmm.
helps them. But then again, they don't want to do it.
They have to want it.
Yeah. So couple of interesting points here. I mean, knowing when to walk away, I just talked about that. Don't discipline mad, because only psych and the few and far between people on this planet can do that effectively or successfully. This one here that I found to be very interesting: apologizing without losing power. So we're having a conflict, and it goes back to the talk like you're right, listen like you're wrong
Mm-hmm.
philosophy. What if you're arguing and you're starting to realize that some of your points are ineffective or they're incorrect? Now, you can't, you could just be like, hey, you know what, you're right. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
You're right about this. And now conflict is a power struggle, right? So now I'm starting to lose power because I'm admitting areas of defeat. So if you do want to engage in effective, collaborative conflict, this suggests here that apologizing without losing power includes things like saying, "Oh, I see your point," or what's the other one? "Now I understand why you're upset." But
It sounds patronizing.
it's when I say it like that. But the point is, it's how the way we communicate is just as important as what we're communicating about. It goes back to my staying positive when saying negative statements.
Mm-hmm.
And this stuff here, we can be having a heated debate, and for me to maintain your engagement in my side of the argument, I can't give you the impression that you're winning unless I'm going to concede the argument entirely.
Perhaps. So personally speaking, I prefer to disclose whenever I'm incorrect right away.
But do you say, "Oh, I see your point," or do you say, "Oh, no, I was wrong"?
No, yeah, more or less, yes,
Mm.
the latter. I just let them know, and I'm in the habit of doing that. I'm consistent. If I am wrong, if I am incorrect, and I let all of my staff know this, I was like, hey, I'm not perfect. I'm human. Occasionally, I'm going to be wrong. And when I am, and I realize it, I'm going to let you know. And then I do that. It happens. We're having a conversation, or I'm coming from one point of view and somebody offers me new information, and we're having the staff meeting. Oh, you know what? You're right. Now that I think about it, I think you are more correct than I was. Or I was wrong, and now I have that new information. Thank you for bringing it to my attention. And we'll continue on. And I let all of my staff know, if I am if I lose my mind, if I'm suggesting something crazy, if I'm just not on it for whatever reason, you can just let me know. Hey, you know what? That idea is not going to work, and you can tell me why. And the communication in my classroom is a two-way street. It's an open door policy, more or less. And please, 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 if I'm incorrect, I want to be correct. I don't want to be, and I would like to know what is correct. So please, we can help each other.
So I have the exact same policy with my guys, and I tell them the exact same thing, that I'm human.
It's like I can work for you.
Yeah.
I can work where you work.
Yeah. No, we would have too much creative conflict. But I do the same thing. So let me ask you this. So I do have this open door policy, and I do tell them, hey, if I'm wrong, you need to let me know, that kind of stuff. But for whatever reason, they treat me with such a reverence about my ability to always be right, that when I am wrong, it's not like, hey, you know what? Can we talk about how you might be incorrect right there, or hey, that's wrong, or or that's dumb, or whatever. It's always like, he was wrong. They don't really know how to engage me. They treat me more like a service than like a human being.
So what can you do to make yourself more approachable?
Well, I've always thought that I've been very approachable. And when I was in groceries, I didn't have this problem. It's the changing industries, and the people that are in the industry is part of the reason I think that's an issue for me.
Is there anybody on your team that approaches you in the way that we were just that you're wanting, or is that everybody?
There maybe one. I got one guy who, and I appreciate this about the team, and I do know that, to effectively manage, you occasionally have to distance yourself from the general staff population, and that's fine. It doesn't bother me. And we've got one guy who's kind of the spokesperson for all the complaints. So what'll happen is if they disagree with something, they'll get together, they'll yammer about it, and then he'll approach me, the one guy.
Okay.
And when they do that, it's effective.
You have a liaison working.
Yeah. The worst part is he'll come to my office. My door's always open. In fact, I have a giant AV rack blocking the door. You can't even close it. And he will start to talk to me, and I can tell by the way he's looking out of the hallway that the other guys are there, just out of my sight,
waiting in the wings.
Yeah, just like and like it's almost like like the child behind mom's skirt, that kind of, it's just that kind of deal. And so I don't much care for that part of it, and I will say things that I know will engage the other guys, because they're right there, they're listening, and we'll see if we can get them to pop their head in my door and join the conversation.
Just come on in, guys.
I've said exactly that more than once. I'm like, hey guys, I know that everyone's here. Let's talk about it together. That kind of stuff. But then that might be, I might be having some issues with emotional regulation at that point.
I would say if you continue to see this occur from now and future staff members and future employees that come across your way, then, unfortunately, sometimes the problem is us, right? We're the common denominator, and we need to correct things about ourselves, or at least not correct things like there's something wrong with you or something wrong with me, the things that we change. But if we're not getting the results that we're looking for.
Yeah. And I've been doing that because I've lost some of the confidence that I had in managing over the last few years with the team that I have now. I used to think that I was really good at it. And I honestly should still think that, because I am really good at it. But changing the way that I talk to these guys specifically to meet their needs, that's where I'm struggling. Because, in groceries, you always have, the problem is, I think, the smaller size. In groceries, you got a store with 110 people in it. So of course you're going to find enough people who want to learn and grow to occupy all your time.
Your sample size is too small.
It's too, I only got 5 guys, and none of them want to do that. So that's that. So you're right. That is something. And I've been reading nonfiction books about management for the first time in my life.
Good for you.
Trying to find new ways to engage these guys. And it's been successful. Some of it's been really successful.
The podcast I was listening to this week, this gentleman was talking all about finding people's motivation. Find what drives them, what motivates them. And if you can, you pretty much have the keys to the kingdom at that point.
And that's great. But I'm learning that not everybody is motivatable. Like I've got a team of older guys who have been doing what they've been doing for a long time. They're set in their ways. And I found that when I stopped trying to find their motivations and just allowed them to accept tasks and exist in the where they're at now, that they're much more responsive.
But everybody has things that motivate them. And so if you can find ways to connect their motivations, even if their motivations are not connected to, or even if it's not apparent that those motivations are going to assist them in their daily tasks and their daily work, there might be a bridge to get there. And if you can connect those dots,
I usually find that bridge to be money. And so I try to explain to these guys, you will make more money if you engage in this.
mm-hmm.
Even that's not a great motivator for everybody. Most people have some kind of drive, like you're saying, but then again, a lot of people find that getting through the day and getting home to that beer and Wheel of Fortune is a success, and it makes them happy.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got several guys who are just like, I'm just trying to get through the day, do what you tell me to do, so I can get home to Miller time. And is that in of itself its own motivation?
Is there any way to actually make that a reality where you work? Hey, you've got this board people can pull things from, and if we accomplish so many things in this day, then there could be 30 minutes of comp time you can go. Or
so I can't do that. I mean, I told you, I do have. I have just recently implemented a ticketing board
mm-hmm.
that's almost like an adventure video game quest board,
mm-hmm.
and that's been really successful. But it's more to keep them on task when we don't have active work. We are working for one space. The lab is just one space,
mm-hmm.
and so we don't always have work like installation work, retrofitting. That we don't always have work. So I did that to keep them on task so that they're not sitting around, which might draw the attention and ire of others, which could negatively affect them.
Of course.
So I'm trying to protect them. They think I'm punishing them for something, but I'm trying to, not they all don't all think that, but some of them do, that I'm trying to protect them from themselves.
Have you explained why you did what you did?
I have.
Oh,
okay. At length. I have.
So it sounds like you're making an excellent effort.
And I feel like I always have. It's just the fact that everything that I've tried to basically make these guys more money has up to this point failed.
Okay.
And it wasn't until I got back to the brass tacks of giving orders and letting people exist that they were like, yeah, we can do that.
Sometimes the conflict resolution that you need is a good firing.
Yeah. Well, yeah, maybe. So
choose your next words carefully.
I'm gonna choose to
go to your next question.
To segue. Yes. So one of the things I think that we don't do when we're arguing with others and we're engaged in conflict is, we're so locked in our own mind about what we want to say next, about what we know is right, that one of the biggest things that we don't do is even consider the other person's point of view or argument. And I know this is one of your big things, the act of listening. I know that you've said it more than once. Every time you engage somebody, you let them do their whole spiel and you listen intently. Mm-hmm. And so let me ask you this. So active listening, and I love active listening. I'm not the best at it, but I find that it's so much more successful if I can keep myself from trying to cut people off mid thought, for a lot of reasons. But for you, how much of letting somebody go first and say everything that they need to say is getting their point of view versus how much of it is figuring out the points that you can argue against?
So when I enter into that interaction, I don't necessarily assume that there's going to be anything I need to argue against. I'm purely just I'm expecting to learn something.
Mm.
I actually invite it. I want to know something I didn't know. If I know everything that you're thinking, if I know everything you're wanting, if I know your point of view completely, or at least as best as you can explain it to me, then I have an advantage.
Yeah.
That's an advantage to have. So many times what I've experienced with people I've worked with, if they're just allowed to tell me what they're thinking and feeling, sometimes that's enough. Sometimes we don't even need to do anything else. Sometimes they just wanted to be heard. They were frustrated in this, in a previous interaction frustrated them. Some past circumstances upset them, and they didn't feel like they were included, heard, or that their needs were valued. And just having that time to express that, sometimes that's enough. Now, if it is not enough, if they want to express themselves and there's more, I need to make sure that I completely understand what they have just said. So I know when I used to take the master class, as you kindly invited me to join, and I liked it for a while, and I've since stopped using it as frequently and discontinued their service. But I'll probably, at one point when they update their catalog a little bit more, dive back in and get some more value. But I know the ex FBI crisis negotiator Chris Voss liked to. Oh yeah, we can show him here. This guy is excellent. He was been on masterclass. He's got a lot of books. He's been on a lot of podcasts. He's excellent. One of the things I learned from him is, and it was affirming to know that I had already been doing this, but I didn't really know how meaningful or effective it was, is simply saying at the end, when the person is finished sharing, it sounds like you're saying, or words to that effect. Basically, you briefly summarize what they have just imparted. It does a couple of things. One, it communicates with them that, oh, he was actually listening. He heard what I said. Two, it allows them to object if you have the wrong impression about what they just communicated. So if I misunderstood, now they can correct me, and then we can do that again. Okay, so now what I understand is that it sounds like that you're getting at, and then if we are there, if we're both aligned with what the issue is, now we can move on.
I'm fond of telling people, like, so, obviously, and you probably encounter this as well, when you're in a supervisory position, you do get people coming to you with complaints about others. That happens a lot. So I always tell people two things. The first thing is, if we took the ego out of the argument, how would it look? And I don't say it just like that because that's kind of arbitrary, but I explain it in a way where it's like, it goes back to the emotional control. Can you take what's making you angry away and look at this from the perspective of an outside observer? You're taking your ego out of it. And the second thing, and that ties directly into it, is perspective. Everything that we do in an argument or in conflict, we do from our perspective. And so by actively listening to the other person in that conflict and reiterating to them that you listened and understood, you're now engaging in conflict resolution and not just conflict. I think that's really important to mention and point out that conflict and conflict resolution are two separate things, because we can engage in conflict all day. We can yell at each other until we're throwing pans and I'm kicking you out of the house, or I can listen and you can listen, and we take our ego out of it, and we try to it's the whole walk a mile in the other person's shoes thought process. I need to listen to you with an intent to understand your position, not just to understand your argument, but to understand why you were thinking that way, why you were coming to those conclusions, why you are understanding the nature of our conflict from your perspective.
Although I wouldn't shy away from a good pan throwing. I could use some new cookware.
Yeah. Oh man, my still love my hex clads. Still love them. So that's a really good cyclical way to stop this episode.
Sure.
Next time,
Let's pause.
Yeah, let's pause to reflect. Did we successfully take the ego out of this argument? I think that I would like to talk a little bit more next episode about some of what I just discussed about the needs for proper conflict resolution and the emotional aspects of it, and how I would like to hear a little bit more about how you are able to keep your frustrations in check when people are just being obnoxiously stupid. Because I know what happens.
It's only because I find it so grossly entertaining.
I know. See, that's the thing. You're such a sociopath.
I'm made for it.
Yeah. you should have been a trial lawyer.
I haven't ruled it out.
Yeah. Still young. So like, comment, subscribe. Love that you watched this entire thing. See you next time.
Cheers.
Yes. New bottle next episode.